All right, guys, to the show. We're going to give it just a few minutes for people to join in here. And in the meantime, I'll tell you what we got going on. We're going to be taking this 6500 C3 Ave Garcia reel, and we're going to take it completely apart. We're going to clean everything. We're going to put a couple replacement parts in here and put it back together. I'm going to show you guys some tips, tricks, and know-how when it comes to doing this, and a couple hacks along the way so you don't lose any tiny little parts, and educate you a little bit about the reels and show you what we got going on with them. So see, we got a couple people joining in. Thanks for joining the show. And if you got any questions while we're doing this, feel free to ask in the chat, and we will be happy. Make sure I got it set on live chat here. That way I can see you guys in real time. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have, so just ask away. If you got a reel out by chance and you're wanting to learn how to do this, you can follow us as we go. And if you're watching this later on, feel free to pause it, rewind, skip forward anything you already know or something like that, and we'll get going underway. Bro, do you sleep? Yeah, it's a little bit late. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning here. Got a lot going on here, doing some projects around the house, waiting for some spackle to dry, things like that. So I'm wide awake. I'm wired. I sent my 6500s off to get them cleaned. I felt stupid when he said all he does is put them in an ultrasonic cleaner. Some people do that G4. I'm going to show you the old school way. There's a lot of places you can go to have these done. There's a couple guys local around here. I go through a guy named Jesse Laredo when it comes to any parts I just don't feel like, any reels I don't feel like cleaning myself. If I don't have a lot of time on my hands, I'll send them down to him. And I also go to him to get upgrades and spare parts. This actually is not my reel. This is a reel of one of my friends and coworkers at my job. And he got it on eBay. And the guy said it was like new condition and clean and ready to use, and it's actually not. So I took this apart and cleaned it once, and I found the things that were wrong with it. So it's not going to be very dirty here to give you guys some examples, but you'll know it when you see a dirty reel. This one actually happens to have a worn out pawl and worm gear, so we're going to replace it. It might not do it. But a way to tell when your pawl or worm gear is bad is sometimes when it gets to the end, it'll catch, or it'll hesitate, or it's got a lot of play in it. This thing's got some wobble to it. Sometimes it'll hesitate when it gets to the end of the level line, and it won't line up your spool properly, let alone caster real good when you're fighting. It can skip, and we're going to change that today. We got a brand new worm gear here. It's a standard worm gear. It's not a dual bearing worm gear. We've got a standard metal pawl. You can get them in ceramic on eBay for pretty cheap. Get a ceramic pawl. If you want to upgrade your worm gear, they got the standard ones have a nylon. I don't know if it'll show up good with the reflection here. There you go. It's got a nylon piece right here and a nylon piece here on the end. If you get the upgraded version, it has a little ball bearing on each end where these nylon pieces are. Gives it more spin, more smooth retrieval, and sometimes it's overkill, depends on what you're trying to do. And then we're also going to upgrade his spool bearings with some ABEC 9 high-speed spool bearings. So if you're looking to upgrade your reel, we'll get into the pieces that you can upgrade as we go through this. I recommend just getting maybe a brand new set of spool bearings and either a cogwheel bearing upgrade or a worm gear bearing upgrade. And if you're going to upgrade your worm gear, if a pawl doesn't come with it, you definitely want to get a ceramic pawl. They're a little bit more expensive, but you'll only have to buy one and you'll never have to get another one again. They're very durable and they don't wear down. So we're going to set these aside till we get to that point, and I'll get started. Mine was 10 plus years old, never got cleaned, finally got tired of the grinding. Yeah, if you don't keep your reels clean, It's good to do it at least a minimum of once a year. If you don't get them clean, you get dirt, you get grit, you get sand in them. God forbid you get fish scales and stuff in them. But what it is with these made in Sweden Abu reels. Sorry if it's shaking. I'm shaking a table. With these made in Sweden Abu Garcia reels, they got brass gears in them. And some of the gears are nylon. And you'll see as we get into it. But the brass ones wear down over time. And occasionally they'll need replaced. But these things are like a Ford. And some people don't like Fords. But why I say they're like a Ford is you can take any part out of one Ford and just about put it in another. And the same goes for these. This is a C3, but you could take parts out of Rockets, Records, Striper Specials, Catfish Specials. They're all essentially a C3. So that's why I'm showing you the C3. The differences in the reels, we can touch on that later if you guys have specific questions about specific models. But just to give you an example, the Catfish Special C3 is $150 new. If you buy a brand new C3, standard C3, they're $120. The only reason you're paying $30 more is because it has orange side plates and a power handle. That's it. So as far as everything that's inside, and performance and functionality, drag, and all that stuff, line capacity, it's all identical. And this reel happens to be, if I look at the footprint, made in 1999. So it's pretty old. You can tell the age of it too by a lot of the older ones, pre-2000, will have stripes, decals on the sides here on the rails. The newer ones have that fancy white writing on the handle side plate. Whether it's right-handed or left-handed, this is a right-handed. They'll have they'll have like 6500 C3 wrote here, but they all say made in Sweden. Will it show it? Get my glare out of the way. And I got too much glare. There it goes. Made in Sweden. If it don't say that, it's not made in Sweden. It's Chinese. Don't get it. Only get made in Sweden Abus. They're built entirely different on the inside. So let's get into it. The things you're going to need, and I'm sure I'm not going to have a very big crowd tonight because it's so late, but that's okay. For anybody who's watching later, you'll still get to learn with us. So what you'll need is a couple tools and a couple essentials. You'll need a flathead and a Phillips head screwdriver. I just interchange my bits. For other mechanical pieces, like taking off the handle, some form of wrench or pliers. Needle nose are really handy to get off E-clips. This is just what I got laying around the house. If you got a crescent wrench, that works great. If you have the little tool that came with the reel, that works great too. Something to just get that handle nut off. I got fingernail clippers here for grabbing tiny things and then trimming my line once I get my line on it. Sometimes a razor blade helps to get tiny little pieces of dirt and chunks out of fine areas, and it doesn't hurt to have a pick either, and I'll show you why in a sec later on. Something else you will want to have is some type of plastic or paper bag or grocery bag from Walmart, Dollar General, wherever, to put the reel into, because that E-clip that's here on this handle, you don't want it flying off around in your house and losing it. It'll get caught in this bag. You'll see why in a second. Hey Night Owls, what's up? Does it float if a fish takes it in the water? I'm getting trolled by my moderators. If you guys don't know what he's talking about, I had a live stream a while back on the Great Miami River where I got a pole and reel taken in the water. Pretty funny. So reels don't float or I would have found it. So what else we got here? Our essentials. You're going to need, besides your tools, a good grease. This is actually, I can't remember if I got this at Home Depot or AutoZone. You can buy the Abu Garcia rated stuff. This is a blue grease. It's literally all the same. I buy in bulk. This will probably last me my lifetime. Something else, for oil, you can get real butter. You can get the Abu Garcia real oil that they brand specifically for these reels. You can use the oil that came in the box with your reel if you got it. I actually use air tool lubricant. The reason I use air tool lubricant is because it's got such a thin viscosity. It's rated for reducing friction and friction temperature and looseness of moving parts and stuff, rated up to 90,000 RPMs. Air tools that you use in your machine shop or mechanic shop, this goes in your air tools, your air drill, stuff like that. I actually put that on my bearings and all my moving parts. And I tell you what, I've used all those other products. To me, this works the best. You can go on eBay, get a gallon of this stuff for probably anywhere from 40 to 70 bucks, and it'll last you your entire life. You just buy it once and be done. Something else you'll need is some Q-tips. They come in really, really handy. Paper towels, and I've actually got my stuff sitting here on some towels to keep it off the table. Make sure I got this sitting back right. Fishing with Mike Chavez, how's it going, man? All right, so let's get into this reel, guys. The first thing that I do is I take off the non-handle side plate. So it'll be the left side plate if you're using a right-handed reel, and the opposite if you're a left-handed reel. Now they have 3 screws in them. 1, 2, 3. And these simply just come apart. Anybody who has worked on watches, cars, reels, or anything with tiny little moving parts, best tip I can offer you is to lay things down neatly and organized in a certain order so you can put them back in the reverse. That way you don't get stuff mixed up. And not that that matters with these, because literally you cannot mix these parts up. These screws only go in this size hole. It's a different size screw compared to everything else. And everything else on the reel is pretty much the same fashion. And then that just simply slides off. Something might fall out, no big deal. That was just my clicker. So, how this should look. On the inside here, you have your cogwheel. This one actually happens to have a dual bearing cogwheel upgrade. So if you buy these out of the box, or some of your older ones, it might just be a solid nylon cogwheel. There won't be no little E-clip right there. That E-clip means this has been replaced. A standard cogwheel is just hard pressed onto that stud, and to get them off you actually have to force them off, and 9 times out of 10 it breaks them. If you're very, very, very careful, you can take a razor blade and kind of take that groove off to slide it out so you can reuse it with an E-clip down the road if you need a backup. But this one's been swapped out with a dual bearing. There's single bearing, there's dual bearing, so there's one on either side. There's regular ones, there's ones with holes drilled in here on the sidewall. They're called slotted ones. And then there's also skeletonized ones where they take almost all the material out here and it looks like a bicycle spokes. And that's all just to reduce weight, let it spin just a tad bit faster. My opinion, it's not really necessary. That stuff's meant for professional casting tournaments where they're trying to get it to go out as far as they can get it. Here you got your slider indicator for your clicker that goes up and down. That's going to be a moving part that we're going to clean around. And then this here is your standard clicker. It's a spring-loaded piece. This is what rubs on this gear here to make that clicking sound when your clicker goes off. Not all reels have this style of clicker. Some of the older ones, like the TGC 6000s, the Electric Blue 6000s, the original 6000 that came in this style, not the 6000Ds that had 4 screws, the older ones. They all come with like a metal flap, and that's actually built into the slider, so it flaps and hits kind of like a, what'd you say, a bicycle spokes with the baseball cards on them. It hits it like that, and you can adjust the pitch on it to make it softer or louder of a click. I actually like those better because they're louder than these, but these are more durable. So we're going to get that off. We're going to set that aside. And here we got these spacers that are going to go with this clicker to keep it in place once we put it back on. So I'm going to set those next to my clicker. I'm going to set that side plate aside. Spool comes right out. On the spool, you can see one bearing there. And if I take this nylon gear off, there's another bearing there. Those are your spool bearings. We're going to set this aside. I'm going to re-clean all this, even though it's already clean, just to give you an idea of what to do. So on this one, if it's real clean, it should just pop out. If not, you can take your pick and work it a little bit. This one's being stubborn. I'll get it out when I get the other one out. These bearings weren't exactly clean and friendly because when he got the reel, let's just say I've never seen grease sit in something so long where it was as hard as clay. Make sure I didn't miss any comments. Okay. Well, feel free to ask any questions if you guys got them. So I'm going to get that out after I get this one out. This is your brake side that goes into the handle side of your spool. And depending on how old or new your reel is, you might see something different here. This is a 2 brake. So these just free slides. Some have up to 6, some have 4, some have none. Some have options where you can click them and hold them in place to keep them off, or you can pull them out to let them slide like this. This one doesn't have that option. This is centrifugal based, so as you're casting, these kick out and rub on this inside part here. Let's see, right here. And it helps moderate the speed of the spool so you don't backlash. To get this off, there's a little snap ring right here that I'm going to pop out. I'm going to use my little pick. This stupid glare to get it to come up. I don't know if you guys can see that on top there. I'm just going to work that around until it comes off. And that's what the piece looks like. Looks like a little earring. That will allow this to just slide off. Now I can work on my bearing. This one can be a little more troublesome to get out because there's a brass washer behind it. A compression washer. It's wanting to be feisty today. There it goes. I will need you. There we go. Little trick. What I just did was, once I got the one bearing out, you should be able to just give it a tap and they should pop out. These bearings really ain't no good. But this is the size of them. They're not very big. Those are your spool bearings. They can look different ways. You might not see a bearing in one side at all. If you got something like a 6000, there might just be one bearing here and a bushing here, or you might have a bushing on both sides. And it's the same size and shape, it's just a big brass ring. They're just bushings. For a busy guy like me that has several abus, who do you recommend to send them to clean and lube? Mike, I would send them to Jesse Laredo. He's in San Antonio, Texas, and it's worth the shipping. He has a real service called Get Real Service. He does a lot of cook-offs and stuff. He does real cleanings, real repairs. There's any make and model, doesn't matter how old or new the reel is, any style, spinning, casting, spin cast, doesn't matter. He can do them all. And he gets all his parts direct, factory direct from Pure Fishing. So these came straight out of the manufacturing warehouse. No middleman. How much you charge to clean my reels? I wouldn't charge you nothing, guys. Now, if I started getting dozens and dozens of them or I'm doing them all the time, maybe a little bit, but he's on Facebook. Yep, just send him a message. He's actually a dealer from my lights. He's one of my local dealers down in San Antonio. We're working to make him a distributor. Well, he pretty much is a distributor right now. Get Real Service. Yep, just like you typed it. I don't think he has a Facebook page called Get Real Service. Look up Jesse Laredo. JESSELOREDO. Tell him Tim from Whisker Sticks sent you and recommended you for a reel cleaning. I don't know if he'll offer any discounts or anything, but he'll definitely do them up right. Hey Chris, how's it going? Getting this off the way. So now that we got the spool bearings out, what I did was, if they're tough to get out, get one of them out, and you can actually pop your spindle out here. Just pops out. Shove that through like a muzzle loader and push the other one out. Something I've had to do from time to time. We're not going to be using these. I'll save them as a backup, but we're upgrading them to these ABAC 9 high-speed bearings. So now my spool's out. This was a compression washer that was on the handle side of the spool behind the bearing. We're going to set that aside. And that's pretty much the clicker side of your reel. So next, this is what you should be looking like right now. You're going to pop your spindle out. That just comes out. Now we're going to work on the worm gear. Okay. This little clip here, it's just like a door hinge almost. It just slides up, pulls out. I'm going to put it back on, slide it in the little knob there, and slide it back over, and it goes underneath that brass focus. Goes underneath that brass gear. Focus. Trying to give you a clear picture. But it just goes underneath that brass gear. And there's two little notches in it that set here and here. So we just swing that out, pull that off, set that aside. Here's where it gets tricky. Now it kind of looks like an Amish puzzle, because this will just slide off. You have to take apart your level wind. Okay. So on your level wind, underneath is a slot for a flathead. So I'm going to switch to my flathead. And it should not be tight to where you got to gorilla muscle it off. It should just pop loose, and then you can thread it the rest of the way off. Don't drop it on the floor like I did. And inside that you have your pawl. This is the part that's bad. So you can give it a little shake, it should fall out. The rest of it should fall apart too. So initially your worm gear, when it's on the reel, Kind of looks like this. Where'd my mark go? I bet roll all the way across the floor. Oh, I see it. That's why I'm doing it live. See the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the funny. Someone say flathead. I got a pointy head. Does that count? So essentially your worm gear is going to look like this. All right. That's what it looks like on your reel. So when you take that little hinge clip off, you're going to de-thread this, not let it fall on the floor. Then you got a pawl that sits right here. That'll just shake out. That looks like this. Focus. Ooh. Where's my autofocus touch? Anyway, the problem with this pawl, it's really hard to show on here. This side is worn down more than this side, so it doesn't allow even traction when it runs along the worm gear. Just look under my Muddy River cat hat. And this will slide off. This pulls out. So this is what your worm gear looks like. So this pawl is essentially following these tracks, and it moves up and down this track. That's what makes your level wind go back and forth. Next thing I do is sometime your nylon piece, your nylon bushing will get jammed in there. You got to pop that loose. That goes on the end here. Now this is a standard worm gear. Same thing, we're changing out to a new one. This is your standard worm gear. It's got a brass gear, a nylon bushing, and a nylon bushing. If you get the upgraded worm gear, you got a ball bearing here that's hard pressed onto it. You can't swap this out. You can't take this bushing off and put a ball bearing on it. Good night, Chris. Have a good one, man. This one here, if you wanted to keep this, you could put one bearing on here and swap this out for a bearing, have a single worm gear upgrade, and it'll help. But it's better to just go ahead and get the one that's already got the ball bearing on it, and then it comes with the extra bearing here. So when you buy a worm gear upgrade, say eBay or wherever you get it from, it'll have one and come with the other one, and it usually comes with a ceramic pawl. And this is probably the most priciest thing you can buy for a spare part, which I think maybe can run anywhere from 20 to 30 bucks. I don't know the exact price because I haven't bought one in a while. So we're going to set those pieces aside. And then I call this the flute. A lot of dirt, grease, and grime gets trapped in here. And it was so bad, I have never had to take a drill bit or a reamer and scrape junk out of this thing before. This is the dirtiest reel I've ever worked on. It's pretty clean now, but we're going to double clean it. If you want to take your thumb guard off here, this just slides up and pops off. It's got two little hooks. Not always the easiest thing to get off. There it goes. Just got two little hooks on it that overlap this rail. And now we're getting into the other half. So when you start on your handle side, go back to my Phillips. Sometimes it might be a flathead. There's about 100 different variations of this, so it'll depend on the reel you got. This one happens to have a plastic cover with a screw that holds it in place to keep the nut inside for moving. Some are just a metal plate that's got a hex head cut out of it. It goes over top of the nut and just has one bolt in place. There's 20 different styles. So depending on the one you got, find a flathead or Phillips head size that goes to this screw here, right here. Hold your handle and pop that baby loose. That allows this to come off if it's being nice. There it goes. Stuck like a piece of candy in a tooth cavity. You don't have to upgrade the bearings, but it helps. What's up, guys? Looks like we got a couple J&J guys in here. I will save this and watch later. Have a good night, Tim. All right, Mike. You have a good night too, buddy. Now, this is a very unique style of drive shaft. Here, this is the tip of the drive shaft that I'm holding. And on most of your typical Abu Garcia reels, this one does not have it. But remember that little E-clip I talked about on this thing? See if it'll let it focus in on it. That little E-clip right there at the top of that shaft, well, some people call them C-clips. It looks like a letter E. It goes over your stud here. This one doesn't have it, but most reels do. Best way I've found to do it, unless you have the special little tool for it, is I'll just take some needle nose. I'll set it just like this. I'll take my needle nose and I'll just grab one end of that E-clip and hold on it. And then I take this pick and I push the other side of the E-clip and I just push them off. And when you do that, that sucker will fly like a catapult. So make sure you've got a big bag that you can fit over this to protect it from flying away. And just do your little triage surgery here. Pop that sucker off and it'll fling off and catch into the bag so you can save it. Otherwise, you'll never find it. So once that's off, you'll be able to take this nut off. That E-clip's on there to keep this from vibrating loose while you're reeling and fighting a fish, where that nut doesn't back off, so your handle don't come off. Once you got that off, you can loosen this nut. Anything you got, pliers, wrench, the reel tool that comes with it, allows those to come off. Set that aside. Then your handle comes off. Then you have this little compression plate. This right here. This helps with your drag. So keep that, set that aside. Now you got some options of what you can do next. I like to take my drag cap off, my end cap, or not my drag cap, my spool tensioner cap. Maybe not on this one. This one's a little bit bigger. My reels, it comes off easy. We're going to get the drag star off first. So if you try to take this off right now, it's just spinning the whole thing. So take you some needle nose or some pliers or something. Hold on to this to get it started. And it'll eventually get loose to where you can back it off. Might have to grab it pretty close to the tip. Get it off as far as you can get it so you can grab it underneath, because once you get to the very end of it, it's going to grab again. Maybe not. I got lucky. Sometimes it gets real tight at the tip and you got to hold it at the bottom. Next, I need my flathead for this particular model. This particular model, instead of an E-clip, has a flathead bolt that runs down the drive shaft. So I'm going to take that sucker loose. You might need a thinner flathead, actually. Makeshift screwdriver. Use my clicker. That comes off. We'll set that aside. Now I'll take my spool tensioner cap off. And the way these work is there's a little tensioner wedge in there, a little shim. It's like a spring pressured shim. And that's what pushes on your spindle outward towards the clicker side of your spool, towards the other end cap here, where this other end of the spindle goes. And it compresses it at both ends, so it doesn't let the spool spin as fast. Message retracted. What did you say, John? Jeff? Next, we're going to take off this plate. First, you want to do the thumb screws. These are called thumb screws because most people only tighten them by hand with their thumbs. But most of them have a flathead option here. Some people call them crown screws. These are a female threaded screw that actually threads to the frame. Make sure they're all out. This pops out. J&J asked what kind of grease do I use. This is Metalon. This is actually automotive machine type grease. It's blue. Find some blue grease. You can use Abu Garcia real grease. Some people use lithium grease. That's what I use. So that takes this off the threaded side of the frame. And these are just free spinning in here. They're actually flared out at the end so they can't come out, which is a good thing. Next, we're going to take these two screws off with our Phillips. And they're just a hair bigger than the ones that go on your clicker side. These could be flatheads. It all just depends on the year, make, and design. They change up some of the hardware from year to year. But all the principles are going to be the same. All the bolts are in the same locations. There might just be a different type of head on them. So once you got that off, make sure you're holding this flat. Lift it straight up because of this. We're going to set that down for now. I want to go over this real quick. So on this particular reel, some of your older Abu Garcia reels will either have nothing here like this one, or they'll have a bearing system in here. This is normally where the newer ones especially, they all have those. This is where your instant anti-reverse bearing is. So on your reel box, when you buy a new reel, on the Abu Garcia box, say you buy a 6500 C3 and it says 3 bearings plus 1 or 2 bearings plus 1, that plus 1 is this right here. It's your instant anti-reverse. Mountain Dew. I said, but it helps, then I accidentally retracted it. Okay. So there's not much going on here in this particular model. It's just a basic blank side plate. Depending on what model you got, like the records have 8 bearings right out of the box. It's the only reel that's got 8 bearings in it. And 2 of those bearings happen to be one here on this part of the side plate instead of just a flat panel, and another one inside here for the spindle, plus the instant anti-reverse bearing. We're not doing a record. Normally I would just put a drop of oil in those to re-lubricate them, but this one has doesn't have an instant anti-reverse bearing because it has a anti-reverse ear dog on it, and that's what the older ones used. So we're just gonna set this aside for now. There's not much going on. All we're gonna do for cleaning this is to go around this little O-ring here that keeps stuff out of your spool tensioner cap, wipe around all the surfaces, and that'll be good. This is the meat and guts of your reel. This is where all the most moving parts are. This is called your brake plate here. Right here is your pinion gear, and that's a part that's known to wear out. The gear teeth on the gear on the other side of the plate over here, you'll see it soon. They wear down, so it doesn't always stay on track and it skips sometimes. This inner diameter here is where your brake system, which was, where'd it go? I tell you guys to lay them out in order, and I'm just setting stuff down. It's under one of these tools. There it is. It's under my clicker. That brake system, that actually sits in there like that, so when you're spinning it, it rubs on it and slows your spool down. What are you doing when you get sand in it? Because I have had a hard time cleaning them when I get sand in them. So normally if I'm fishing and I get sand in it, they'll tell you that you can just run the whole thing, run water over the whole thing. It washes a lot of the stuff out. I don't do that. I actually take these apart and I will go through this whole process. Now, sitting here and explaining this to you guys is taking a lot longer, obviously. But if I was just doing this myself, it'd already be done. We're 42 minutes into this since I started it. I can usually do one in about a half hour or less. Not that big a deal. Longer if it's got more dirt in it, but if you got a lot of sand or clay or grime or silt or anything like that that gets into your gears, it is good to clean them out because it can wear out your gears and it can mess with the synchronization and it can make stuff skip or hesitate or not engage at all. So it's good to just take them apart, give them a good once over, and then put it back together. If you get it in your grease, that on your parts that's got grease on them, you want to try to get as much of that grease out as you can, and then the oil too. The oil will cause some of that stuff to stick. So just wipe everything dry again and then reapply new grease and lube, and it's just better for you in the long run. Sometimes it's a pain when you got to take them apart more than you really need to. I usually do mine about 3 times a year. It's recommended to do it at least once a year. And even though this thing has just recently been cleaned, you're going to see how dirty they can get real quick. And it hasn't even been used yet. It's just stuff collecting in the air. So first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to take my drive shaft off. That's this entire assembly here. That just comes off. This is your drive shaft, spool, spindle. This one actually has a threaded female part for that screw that sat on top of here. So that holds this in place and keeps it from doing this. I'm going to set this down for a second and we're going to go over this. This is the most complex part. You do not want to mix it up. So this has, on almost every reel that you get that's Abu, you'll have 2 compression bushings. They're little cup-shaped bushings. So there's 2 of those there. And they have a special slotted hole that goes in sync with, I don't know if it'll show it. Trying to get my focus right. This isn't completely round. The first maybe 10 threads, see how it's flattened out there, the shiny part? That's flattened, so that synchronizes with that bushing. Keep it in place. Well, it's flattened all the way down, but then it's reduced. Let's see. Focus. I don't know if you guys can see it or not. There it goes. Easier in the dark. See how it's shorter at the tip? Next, for this particular one, there's another spacer. Another spacer that goes underneath those. Then a brass washer. And then this has a bearing on it. That might be a pain to get off. There it goes. This isn't a high-speed bearing, this is just more of a spinning bearing. That is what's spinning in that slot there. Your other newer reels will have that built into this. So here's where it gets nitty-gritty. I'm going to push down to pop my drive shaft off. And this is your drive shaft gear. Inside here is a series of, this is where your drag washers reside. And there's 6 pieces. Not that one. It's why handy to have this little pick sometimes. When the oil or grease or anything like that, even just a little bit of moisture gets in between them, it makes them stick together. Sometimes it can be hard to get that one last one out of the bottom. And then underneath that gear is another little spacer washer. And it might be a different material depending on how new or old your reel is. And that goes between the gear and this here. So alright, I'm going to separate that over there. We're going to get to the 6 that we need to get to. So in series, it's going to look like this. You got your drag washer, black piece. Some might be carbon fiber. This is carbon. Metal washer, drag washer, metal washer, drag washer, top cap. Then all 3 of the metal pieces look different. This one has a wing on it with a round center. This one has no wings with a slotted center. And this usually is either a flat piece just like this, or it'll have, for this model, it's got that big beefy top. And they go every other. So now that those are separated, we are going to take off the gear dog. You might not have this on your reel. This is a part that keeps your reel from reeling in reverse. And what it does is it catches these teeth on this gear, and I'll show you how that operates in a second. But if you got a newer reel that has an instant anti-reverse bearing, this won't be on here. It will just look like that. You might still have that piece there, that spindle, but it won't be on there. And pretty much all that's left here is your thumbing gauge and your pinion gear. Now, I don't bother with taking all this stuff off because nothing's really moving back here. Yes, it's sliding, but there's a lot of springs and stuff in here that I don't like to mess with. And to get your pinion gear all the way out, you would take all this off, but I don't mess with it. I just slide my pinion gear up out of its notch to get it up away so I can get down into this cavity and clean smut out, and then you can just pop it back in place. That's one of my little hacks. I'm not saying this is the official way to do a reel. This is how Whisker Sticks does it. What do you do if your buddy rips your Cat Max apart and don't put it back together the right way and now don't work? I've actually never messed with a Cat Max. I know some reels got totally different innards. Minyangs, Ancient Mariners, Cast King Rovers. Those aren't built the same way Abus are. Unfortunately, Abus are all I know because that's all I use. So now that we got this down to the nitty gritty, you're literally just going to take every piece that you've laid out here, and I will show you. We're going to take all this stuff and just wipe it down one by one. And some of the more complex pieces like the worm gear assembly, the drive shaft assembly, I'll show you up close. But we're literally just going to take them, wipe them with a paper towel. I don't like wiping them with the microfiber rags because you don't want those microfiber hairs getting in between your gears and stuff. And this is what it looks like completely taken apart. So let's get started. So I will physically just take a paper towel. This is all you're doing with all your parts. Just go through them one by one. Set them back down where you picked them up so you know what's what. And if you happen to be lost or confused doing this, feel free to pause this, go back, rewind, look at something over again. We're still getting dirt out. I just go over all the surfaces. Make sure there's no grit and threads. Anything with threads. And when it comes to stuff like your side plates, I'm just giving everything a good once over. I'm not going to go over every single piece because this hasn't been used since it was last cleaned. But I had to take this reel apart anyway instead of using one of my other ones because we're putting these upgrades in here for our buddy named Andrew Ross. So I'm just looking at some of the sloppy stuff that I want to redo, especially all the stuff with grease on it. And we're going to give it all a new coat. And you might not get everything off. That's okay. You just want to get the bulk of it. But if you really want to take your time, some people will do things like soak them in certain, some of their metal parts in certain solvents to get all the oil residues off, or denatured alcohol, things like that. I don't get in all that soaking stuff. But then again, I'm not a professional. Something you do want to particularly clean, this is where we get into the Q-tips. Q-tips are good for where paper towels and rags don't fit. So I'll take it and go around here, get a lot of this out. But it's really, really good for where the pawl goes in here. And you don't want to just go in and out because you'll pull the fabric off the Q-tip. You want to keep it spinning. You can go in one motion or you can go back and forth. But you want to get all that grit out of there. You want this to be squeaky clean. No dirt, no grime, no residue. And even though I just cleaned it before, it's still got some stuff in it. Something else you want to take a Q-tip through is your drive shaft hole. Now, it might take a little bit to force the Q-tip through because there's such a big wad of cotton on the end, but if you keep twisting and pushing, eventually it'll work its way up in there. And just keep twisting as you work it all the way through. Kind of like cleaning a gun. Look at that. And then even just yanking it, caught some more on the back end. Look down in there, make sure you don't see no chunks of dirt. You want to clean this like you're cleaning a gun. We'll put it that way. Another important piece is this flute. I'm using a Q-tip for that too. This was probably the dirtiest part on this reel when he first got it. I'm just putting that down in there any way I can get it. You might want to use some type of cleaner with it because this is just metal. That's fine. You want to watch what you're using on your bearings and on your nylon parts more than anything. Because certain things like acetone can actually liquefy certain plastics. Next thing we're going to use a Q-tip for is where our pinion gear is. We're going to take all that old grease, scoop all that out. Get as much of it as you can. Careful not to drag a bunch of your fibers onto the gear. Clean all that gunk out. And then I'll pop that back in place. Give it a spin, make sure it's not collecting anything anywhere. Scoop it out as you need it. And that's pretty good to go. This is also a good opportunity to go around all your big surfaces like your brake plate, your frame. Get any dirt around this inside part of your spool here where your spool is going to be rubbing, making that grinding sound. That's where you get a lot of your grinding noise. Good opportunity to get underneath your foot plate. Just give everything a good once over. Just clean it to the best of your ability. It doesn't have to be perfect. As long as you're getting the majority of the junk out, it can save you a lot of time and money and headache. So now that we got that done, we're going to start putting it back together. That's where this stuff comes in handy. This is where we're going to lube it and tube it. I'm going to take this lid off my grease here. That's what my grease looks like. I think I got something down in there. I found a treasure. If I can get it out. I think there's a bobber in there. Huh. That's funny. I'm gonna set that to the side. Must have happened when it was rolling around in my trunk. Anywho, take the grease. We have our air tool ready. Air tool oil ready. We're going to get ready to put this back together. So what we do is I like to do my drive shaft first. I'm going to take my oil, 1 drop, no matter what you're doing. Let's see here. Put this one underneath. Put my gear back on. Make sure it pops into place and seats right. That's going to move independently. Next, we're going to put our drag system back in place. So first you do the carbon drag washer. They might be rubber if it's an older reel. You can buy these carbon drag washers separately. And then you're going to do the plate with no wings. Then another drag washer. Then the plate with wings. And there will be little slots at the top of the gear that those line up with. Can you see it? Make sure those are sitting down in there. Then your last drag washer, and then your top piece. That's ready. We're going to take 1 more drop of oil right at the base of the spindle. And before we put this on, we're going to put some grease on it. Now you can use your finger, you can use a Q-tip, however you want to apply it. Just want to be very light with it. You don't want a whole lot, because it's going to get mashed up in all these gear teeth. And if you put too much in there, one, it'll slow your reel down more than it'll help keep it moving. It'll also allow more dirt and stuff to be trapped in it. So as you can tell, there's not really a lot on there. I just kind of feathered it on. I'm going to make sure my dog ear is back in place. Set that down on there. Boom. Now the way this dog ear works, see if I can put this in the right view for you, is those the cog-like teeth. I don't know, can you guys see them good? Those teeth there, that dog ear here catches these. So when you cast, your spool's going this way, and it pushes the dog ear out, like so. It'll push it out away from it. Kind of hard to illustrate. Okay, so it pushes it out like that. When you try to reel backwards, it catches it like a ratchet strap. They don't only let it go one way. So make sure that's operating properly and positioned right before you close it up. Otherwise, you have to take it back apart and realign it. Now that that's ready, I'm going to take my brass washer, then my spacer, my bearing. Oh, wait. Bearing, washer, spacer. I had that backwards. Driveshaft, bearing, washer, spacer. Then we're going to go back to those 2 compression bushings. I don't think it matters which way you have them cupping as long as they're opposite. So you don't want them spooning. You want them this way, or, well, you get what I'm trying to do, opposite, this way. As long as they can compress, I've never had an issue with it either way. So whichever way you put the first one on, just make sure you do the other one the opposite. And you'll know you got it right if you got a gap. I don't know how you can see that gap. Now it's ready to go back into the plate. So before you put your plate on, keep in mind there's a notch here for your engage button, and make sure that your instant anti-reverse gear dog, if you have one of those, make sure that's tucked in where it's supposed to be. Otherwise this won't line up properly. Make sure that that's in the slot right. And we'll take our 2 screws, get them started. Fat fingers. I can't get it in the hole. Maybe if I set it down. There we go. I was using the wrong one. They look pretty close, but I was actually trying to put the one for the handle in. So don't feel bad if you think you're messing up. If something's not going in there right, it means it ain't the right part. Everything has its own specific spot. So I'm going to snug those back down evenly. Take your time. Don't over tighten one or the other. Do some even distribution. Next, you can either put it on the frame or you can go ahead and do the handle. Doesn't matter. I'm going to take my spool tensioner cap, get that started. Surprised I still got 3 people watching within it being 2 o'clock in the morning. I know it's a late show, but I'm wide awake and I needed to get this done anyway. Now your spool tensioner cap's on. We're going to work back to the handle. So next, you would do your drag star. And what I like to do is I'll just give this a drop of oil. Make sure there's nothing in my threads. This is where it gets kind of tricky. It'll start real easy, but after it gets so far down, it'll catch. That ain't right. That's not right at all. I forgot a step. Forgot to put that little screw back in. I'm not used to this style. Yeah. go. Maybe I'm just getting lucky with these drag stars for once today. Usually they'll stick on you. After you get so far, they don't want to turn, and you gotta take some needle nose and grab underneath, tighten it down to where you can grab it on top, and then do it. Then you put your compression plate on. Then your handle. And then your nut. Well, if you got the ones with the E-clip, your E-clip would go on now. Wait. No, after. Do the E-clip last. The E-clip keeps the nut from coming off. Get that a little snug. And then your thread handle, your handle screw should line up with the hole in the handle. If it's not, just give the nut a little bit of a tweak. Turn it just a little bit so it makes it line up. Boom, cranking. So now we're going to put this back on the frame. It'll only line up one way. Get these thumb screws started. Alright. Take my flathead. Now I'm going to give him just another little quarter turn. You get him hand tight, and then I give him just a little bit of an extra, little quarter turn. And then that way nothing's going to get loose. Now we'll take our spindle, put that right in here, pops into the pinion gear. We're in the home stretch, guys. Next I do my worm gear. So we're doing away with the old worm gear stuff. All I'm going to need is my level wind and my sleeve. So we got this new worm gear here. New nylon bushings. You can see the difference. This is the new one, this is the old one. You probably can't see the difference on this, but old pawl, new pawl. They are way, this one's worn way the frick down. This is brand new, it's got much more tip to it. So we're going to take bushing goes on the end of your flute with the slots in it, with the thin part sticking out towards your handle. Then your worm gear goes into that. Slide it through. This will be easier to show this way. Slide it through. Make sure the open part's facing down, and it'll pop into place. There's a groove in this brake plate to seat that. But before you do that, you have to thread this onto it. It's really hard to do this stuff slow, guys, I'm telling you. Get that on. And then you have to make sure there's a thread in the top of this here for the level one to hang into. There we go. So it'll sit like that. And while you're holding that in place, I recommend having this vertical like this so it doesn't pop out. Put that little door hinge on there. You want the round end facing out. Man, that new bushing don't play. It's a little bit bigger. There we go. Normally it's not this troublesome to do, but that bushing's got a lot bigger width to it. There it goes. Wasn't in all the way. Okay, so it goes in one hinge, and then it goes between the brass wheel and the nylon bushing underneath, and then hooks into the other notch. And it doesn't matter which side's facing up or down, as long as you got the round part sticking out. You can have this one way or the other. It doesn't matter. The pins are the same distance apart. Now all we have left to do is to align this pawl. So you literally just drop it down inside the hole of the level line. Which can be a little tricky. Maybe not. This one's... I haven't done a brand new one in a while. Might actually have to do this a little bit differently. Oh, I see, the pawl. He actually gave me too big of a pawl. So I'll have to sand this one down a little bit before I can put it back in. I believe this one's for a 7,000. So until then, we'll put this old one back in here. I'll get one of my old ceramic ones out later. Throw that in. I see the problem. We'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Okay. Back to where we left off. The barrel on this pawl is actually just a hair wider. I don't know if you can see the difference, but this one's a hair wider in diameter than this one. It's the same diameter as my level wind. So we can't use that one at the moment. I'm going to set that to the side. This one literally just drops in. And it's just sitting right there. So now you got it. Did you see it drop? Show you again. You just drop it in there. Alright, it's kind of sticking up. Just move it till it drops. Give it a little wiggle. Might have to rotate it a little bit. Till it sets down in there. Now it's dropped down. Now that that's in, I'm going to gently thread this on. And you do not want to over tighten it. Matter of fact, it probably won't let you. Now nothing's going to move yet because nothing's transferred over here to move the gears. But to see how this would work, you would just manually turn this gear and you'll see that it's cranking. If it's not doing that, then your paw's not lined up. You can go either way with it. So he's ready to rock. I go over it a couple times just to make sure that everything's holding good. Good traction, no skipping. Yep, we definitely still need to get him a new paw. Still hesitating. This would work if I could get it down just a hair. I might have to do some sanding. So, next we're going to do the spool. Before we can do the spool, we got to put everything back together that goes into the spool. So we're going to put one bearing in there. Use my little trick. Now this, that's the one that goes into the clicker side, the one that goes into the handle side. It has a little brass washer that has to go behind it, and it's cupped also. You set that down in there. Drop the bearing in. Boom. Now I don't really need to oil these. But if you're doing it, just one drop in each one. We're going to put our brake system back on, feed it through the slots. And then I work this little snap ring back over. Snap back in, looks just like that. Easy peasy. And we got our high-speed bearing upgrade. Now, with these free sliding brakes, they can be a little tricky to get back into where they need to be. The ones who are clickable, where you can leave them toggled on or off, you can leave them pushed in and they won't flare out on you and prohibit you from going in all the way. Because there's actually two grooves in that pinion gear. See that groove up there? There's one on top and one on bottom. They coincide with these here. This little ear here and ear here. So those have to line up, but you also have to keep the brakes tucked in so they can go inside this part here, inside this diameter. So it's best to almost do it vertical. And if you have to, just position it to where you can give them a little nudge. The bearing fell out. I lost my bearings. Once it's in there, you can line them up, and then they set in there good. If your bearing pops out, just pop it back in. Perfect. Home stretch, guys. So this is the nylon clicker gear that slides over your spindle on your clicker side. Just goes right over top of that bearing. Keeps your bearing from popping out. Get my bags out of here. I think I'm actually starting to get a little sleepy. We're going to take a little bit of grease. And just put a little bit. You don't need any on these gears. You want a little bit on this one, and you don't have to cover every tooth because it's going to spread out. And then I put a little bit on my worm gear here to lubricate those teeth. And then I do the same thing with my cog wheel. You want to do both teeth on the cog wheel. So I just got a little bit in here on these teeth, a little bit on these teeth. What's happening is, when you're turning your handle, these teeth, the little ones, are transferring to this set of teeth, which transfers the energy from this to your brass gear here, which operates your level line. Now that those are lubricated, put my clicker on. It only goes on one way. It'll look like that. Don't forget about these spacers. These little tiny spacers, they go over these. If for some reason you happen to lose one, it breaks, it never had one, or it's only got one or not the other, falls out, can't find it, an easy replacement is to go get you some some cable wire, some Romex wire, any type of wire with that similar diameter. Doesn't have to be perfect, it could be a little bit bigger. And just strip you a little piece of that insulation on the outside of the wire and cut it to size and slide that over these, and it makes an excellent backup. That's essentially all this is a little piece of plastic tubing. That keeps this from rattling around, because these plastic spacers are going to push against your side plate. Most finicky part of the whole process, putting this side plate back on, because you have to align your clicker slider with the engagement of your clicker. So put it in the off position, and you can just kind of align your screw holes with the pins here, and just gently try to line them all up, eyeball it, and eventually it'll fall into place. You might have to fidget with the clicker a little bit. It might try to, I don't know if you can see this, it's trying to push it to the side. Can't do stuff upside down. There it goes. Fidget with that a little bit, try to slide it up and down, eventually it'll set into place. Thread in our screws here. Put my Phillips head tip back on. Tighten them up evenly. You don't want to put too much pressure on one side or the other. Start them off all snug, and then gradually tighten them over. Distribute the pressure. Couple more things to go here, guys. So we're pretty much done. Hey, my clicker's working. We're pretty much done with this. I'm just going back over, double checking my screws. Make sure my spool tensioner is not all the way down by accident. And we're just going to check the functionality here. There's a couple more things that I like to do. Something important to make sure of is in this slot here where your level wind is, you want to make sure that there's no dirt trapped on the ends of these tracks, closest to the farthest ends here and here. You don't want any dirt in there. What that can do is cause this to go crooked, and it will wear down one side of your pawl. And it can actually wear down the edges of your worm gear also. You want free movement and smooth movement too. So for smooth movement, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one drop in the track and 1, 2, 3 drops of oil onto the worm gear. One on each end and one in the middle. And it's okay if you have a little runoff here on the outside of this flute, because that will lubricate this hole that the flute goes through. So I'll just leave that upside down and run it through a couple times. Let it cycle, let it spread out. Make sure everything's smooth as butter. And we're essentially done, guys. Check your drag. Loosen it up. Make sure everything works the way it's supposed to. If you got your drag way too loose, It might not spin much. I can stop it with one finger, so I know I got my drag too loose. Going good. Tried disengaging and engaging your reel. That didn't take, so maybe the gear dog's off. Sounds like the gear dog's off. Yep, gear dog's off. So I'll have to go back and hit that. But it's running pretty smooth. Clicker's working. I gotta go back and make that one adjustment. It's really hard. While I'm thinking about this, it's really hard to actually sit and do this while you're trying to explain it. And you're trying to hold things upside down the way you're not used to. Doing things backwards. So I'll have to go back and hit that again real quick. But aside from that miss up, we're done. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments below. Tell me I'm an idiot for not letting that happen. But that's why we do things live. And now you know what to look for. If you go to do this yourself. You push that button in and it's not engaging, something's not right. Go back, look into it, see what looks different. So I'm gonna have to go back and change that. My gear dog obviously isn't in place. It's probably underneath my drive shaft. So it's letting it go in reverse. And the fact that I'm turning this, that means that the drive shaft teeth are up too high away from the engagement arm that pushes this button back out. So my ear dog's not on. So I'll have to take this back apart and do that real quick. And if you want me to do that live, we can keep it rolling, but if not, let me know. I don't have to take every single little thing apart this time. We'll just get straight to it. I don't want to leave you guys empty-handed and be like, dude, you said here's how you do a reel and couldn't even do it right. It's really hard to do stuff upside down and backwards. Especially since I'm predominantly right-handed. But we'll get it. Can't have nobody think I'm a hack. But when it comes to troubleshooting these things, just like troubleshooting a car. If you hear a noise, you don't listen to it for 6 weeks. And then you might not have that part there when you go to fix it. You hear something weird, something sounds funny, something feels funny. You get into it and figure out what's going on. I actually need, let's see. I don't have my thin flathead with me for this. I'm going to use a butter knife. Boom, boom. Somebody's gonna be watching this and laughing. You don't have to have a flathead to take off a flathead screw, but it helps. It really does help. And I was right. So here was the problem. That's sitting on top of the arm instead of catching it. There we go. See, what should happen is when you push it in, those teeth catch. This is the arm here. Pushes it down. And the gear dog here, which is by my thumb, should come out a little bit and then come back in and grab. So that was not working properly. All right, let's get this back together. Now, I did a video like this in the past, about a year ago. We had a lot of trouble with the live stream cutting in and out, bad signal. So I don't know what good quality is of that. I just wanted to do this while I was on a whim. I knew I had to do this anyway. And I figured I could show you guys and talk to you and interact with you. But what I am going to do down the road is once I get my buddy's reel back to him, I'm going to get one of my own reels apart, because I need to clean them anyway. And we'll go through this again. I'll get a couple cameras set up and do a full production, get close up on the pieces and let you guys see them one piece at a time and explain what each one does. And we can get a little better quality thing going with it. So be looking for that in the future. And if you guys have any other ideas for things you would like to see for the fishing community on our channel, let us know, because we are always looking for new cool ideas. We're going to be doing a bank fishing segment that talks about where to locate fishing spots, how to go use things like Google Maps to find new areas to fish, check out the area before you get there, kind of get a lay of the land, get some ideas of where you want to go, and then how to catch bait, how to locate shad, things like that, and do the whole bank fishing scenario from start to finish. That's going to be coming up. Oh, almost forgot my threshold plate. want to see how to catch bluegill, or how to go after channel cats, or flatheads only, or blue cats only, we can make it happen. Boom. Can't go backwards. Now, with this being an older reel, it's going to have some slop to it. So, it's going to have some play. I can go back and forth a little bit. And it'll have a little delay in pushing the button out. But that's how these older reels are. So now we're going to get this baby back together. Do one final run through. Have to make sure my brakes are pushed in. All right. I forgot my spool tensioner cap. All right. Screwdriver. Use just a quarter turn. Give him some little bit of extra. And we're ready to rock. So let's give it one more run through. Loosen my drag. I should be able to reel. And if I just touch this spool with my thumb, it stops. Tighten my drag up. It's slowing down. There we go. Try my clicker. That's working. That sucker gave out again. Might have to replace that dog too. Oh, looks like I got another part to replace on here. Oh, it's catching the instant anti-reverse. Oh, it looks like I got to replace that part too. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to get this stuff cleaned up and get this part replaced on here. Got some spare parts sitting out back. If you guys got any other questions or tips or tricks, let us know in your comments below. We hope to check out some of our other videos. Visit our website, whiskersticksfishing.com, and come follow us on Facebook too. Yeah, I'm gonna get this stuff picked up and see if I got a spare gear dog on there to put on there for him and get that taken care of for him. Till then, we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.